Hey guys, it's Mountain Walk, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about, uh, well, dewdrops. 10 of them, or more. Well, 10, basically. Mostly just 10. And these are going to be the best ones. Overall, pretty much formats. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. This is going to be cool. Lots of interesting sweet cards on here that I like, or used to like a lot more than I do now, because they're less good now. But some I like even more. So let's talk a little bit about two drops. Okay, first off, honorable mentions. We've got Wild Mongrel. First off, this guy is pretty sweet. He's a good puppy, and he used to be back in the day like one of the better creatures ever printed because it just pumped itself, got bigger, it dodged all sorts of color hate and stuff, which was a much bigger thing back in the day. So pretty strong, pretty strong. Saw play in the Madness deck pretty much in every format. Last time it was good was saw play in the Survival deck from 2010 in Legacy, the Blue Green Madnessy one, with Vengevines and stuff. That ended up getting Survival banned, or one of the decks that did. So pretty sweet, pretty sweet. Yeah, not as good these days. Still pretty solid, pretty powerful. Then we got Vampire Hexmage. This is basically on here because of its interaction with Dark Depths, and this lady beats down actually pretty good, which is kind of nice because sometimes when you're forced to do it, this card does it pretty well because of course 2 power for strike. It even does interesting stuff like multiples, like if you can have one to kill a Jace or something, or a Liliana or whatever, and then use the other one to get your token. Or in any sort of situation. Sometimes these are useful or reasonable to kill planeswalkers. But yeah, basically turns your land into a 2020, which is pretty sweet. Saw play and of course the current Dark Depths decks. Let's say that 10 times fast. In Legacy, the black green versions, excuse me, and they're pretty sweet. And of course, in extended, it saw play in the Thopter Depths deck. Pretty good there. Okay, next up we got Elvish Visionary. Saw a little bit. I think off the top of my head, this guy saw play in standard, and then maybe modern play too. But mostly, it's I think all I can think of is like this guy in the Elves deck with Wirewood Symbiote. That's where like most of his awesomeness comes from. It adds a little bit of a card advantage aspect to the deck because you can block, and then you can bounce it too at the same time. So you can do all sorts of stuff with it. It's pretty sweet, pretty great. Seems a little humble compared to some of these other cards, but it's very good at what it does. Then we got Young Pyromancer. Again, this card's pretty strong, but it requires a lot of you just need to play a lot of instants and sorceries to really get this guy going. So it's strong, but it's a little slow and requires you to build your deck in a certain way. But it's pretty good, pretty good. Also, the art's garbage though. It's got some bad art. Uh, Fortunately, he grows up into quite the cutie. So the seasoned Pyromancer, I think it's supposed to be the same character thing, but it's a dude. Um, Instead of the weird Dennis the Menace looking thing. Like, what the fuck is that? That's so stupid. Anyways, and of course, last honorable mention is Baleful Strix. Again, this card's on there because it just does everything. It's got flying, it's got death touch, it's multicolored, so it can pitch to force will. Uh, it's got artifact synergies, of course, card pops. Basically does everything. Pretty much a card advantage a lot of the time. So this card is pretty nice, pretty nice. I like it quite a bit. But there are quite a few cards that are better than these guys. So let's get into it. Let's start at number 10. All right, number 10, we got an invitational card. And this is a good one. One of the first couple of invitational cards. This one was the one that really made a big splash. Although Avalanche Riders was pretty good. But this guy's great. Saw play in basically every format, um, and is just awesome. Is probably one of the first hate pairs that I can think of, and is really wonderful against the more linear decks or decks that rely on a couple different spells to resolve. Um, this guy does it. So not only does he play in all sorts of different decks, like everything from like modern humans to the old fish decks. A lot of times control decks will sideboard into Meddling Mage as not only another threat, but an ability to attack the combo decks and linear decks on a different axis, other than just like say like Graveyard Hate and counter spells, whatever. You'll have Graveyard Hate, counter spells, and Meddling Mage. So you get all these different things interlocking to make a big old puzzle for your opponent to navigate. So this card is sweet, and it's pretty awesome, very fair, uh, and it's great. I love this. I love this guy. This was one of the few cards on the list that wasn't immediately obvious that it should have been on the list. But when I started thinking about it, I was like, yeah, this guy's sweet. I love the art. Yeah, I mean, I like the new art too, but it's like it's so at odds because it's certainly not Meddling Mage, not like Chris Picula, but I like the new art too. It's not too bad. Um, I'd probably use the new art in the modern humans deck, but anyways, this guy's good. Let's go on to the next one. All right, number 9. This guy's on the list because he's just broken as fuck. This card is pretty silly. Pretty silly. Not a lot of creatures that say answer me or die. Um, I mean, maybe something like Primeval Titan. Actually, Primeval Titan might even be worse than that guy, than Hermit Druid in that respect, since even if he resolves, he still gets a land. You get a couple lands. Uh, but basically, Hermit Druid just does pretty silly stuff. Mills your entire library, typically into your graveyard, and then you do some sort of like Dread Return thingy, Lab Maniac thingy. I mean, all sorts of broken stuff. I mean, he's pretty strong. In my commander deck, I use him. Although I play basic lands, so I can fetch those up. So it can be like a lay of the land and then fill my graveyard after it gets wiped away, or just to fill it in general. Um, Hermit Druid is really strong in Commander too, and I like him. I use him pseudo fairly. It takes a little bit too much effort to turn him into like a one card combo thing, and then you like lose the game if he's answered. And yeah, this is a little bit too risky for me. I'm more of a flash hold guy. That's a little bit better, I think. But yeah, he's obviously pretty much on here mostly just for power level, because he's not really legal in the formats where he was even legal in, because he's been banned, like old extended or current legacy. So yeah, one of the few creatures that's ever been banned, or at least one of the few that's ever been banned, I should say, legitimately. Um, so that certainly adds to his pedigree. Uh, so yeah, he does a lot of stuff. One card combos. He can add all sorts of other disruption and things like that. Um, Unfortunately, the reason why he's down so far on this list, or up it, I guess, I can never figure that out, was or is because this card is super duper vulnerable, and there's an infinity amount of hate that this guy is bad against. I mean, literally everything. Everything from like Lava Dart and Grim Lavamancer to Pithing Needle and Revoker to Swords to Plowshares. I mean, Surgical Extraction, Leyline of the Void. I mean, literally everything under the sun. I mean, like Mog Fanatic is just too much for this guy to handle. Like, it may be a one card combo, but it is so easily answered, especially today, where it's like, even if it was unbanned in Legacy, I'm probably just playing Belcher or Sneak and Show or something. Or like the former is faster and less vulnerable to stupid shit, and the latter is certainly a million times more resilient. Or even something like Reanimator, which is a lot better. Like this card, again, it's good, but yeah, it's not as good as I think it would be currently. It's fallen off the map a little bit in power level because there's just so much more removal now that's good. Stuff like Fatal Push and whatnot, um, and just more of it. Uh, and the fact that like you can just not beat like mono removal dot deck like burn or something like that is pretty bad, since those are decks you typically should beat. Like the combo deck should typically beat like the slower, more mid-rangey decks that have a lot of removal, things like that. But that's not the case here. And then you have stuff like first turn on Blood Moon or whatever, which you can't do anything about because you're playing a bunch of basics in your deck. So you're like, shoot, I need a bunch of like Elder Spirit Guides or Lotus Petals or something to do anything. It's just, yeah, that's pretty bad. So it is certainly very, very strong. And even though it hasn't seen play in a lot of different formats, power level's definitely through the roof. But that, of course, is mitigated by how weak it would be, I think, um, compared to other decks you could play today. But again, also some of his power also comes from Commander 2, where it's pretty sweet there. So good card, but uh, a lot worse than it used to be. So that's number 9. Let's look at number 8. Okay, so this is kind of a cheating cheat, but this guy's basically a cast him as a 2-drop quite often, and he's sweet. This card is seen, I mean, pretty ubiquitous in a lot of different formats. Saw a lot of play in Standard, saw a lot of play in sees a lot of play in Modern, and of course Legacy as well, and of course Vintage, and all in like different decks too. So like in Vintage it was like the Workshop decks, and then in Legacy it was like the Post decks usually, but sometimes now like the Bomberman decks will play them, the Steel Stompy decks, and then in Modern it's like say the Hardened Scales and stuff like that. And of course, in Standard it was pretty much everything. So like this card's super flexible, can be cast all up and down the curve, but I do like casting it for 2. And it was the Mana Sink, of course, which is pretty great, and it's a combo card, so like the Devoted Druid combo decks in Modern will play it, so you can fetch it up because it's a creature, and then it's Mana Sink, and then just does everything. Real sweet, real sweet. So it's like a combo card or a fair card. I mean, super versatile. It can basically do anything. Uh, you can do everything. Just pump a bunch of damage into it. And, oh, I almost forgot this one. I use it as a combo piece, as a redundant combo piece in my Reanimator Mimeoplasm deck in Commander. It's pretty sweet there. Um, just get a ton of counters on it and beat people down. Because you have the Necrotic Ooze interaction. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Um, yeah. You could just do anything. Anything. Everything. Super sweet. I like this card. It's really cool. It's one of my favorite cards recently. God, it's a construct. It even has the synergy with the new Scrapyard Recombiner. I think that's the guy. The new modular guy that searches up constructs. This guy's a construct, by the way. And he likes getting counters too. So, I mean, shoot, who knows? All sorts of synergy. Okay, let's go to number 7. Okay, so this guy's pretty meat and potatoes of 2-drop creatures. I think he at some point, probably 5 or 6 years ago, probably would have been at the top of this list. Time hasn't been kind to him. Again, like a lot of cards on this list, he was played because he was harder to remove. Not the case so much anymore. So he's easier to deal with. There's less decks that really want to play him. Of course, I'd argue that he was put into too many different decks, especially in the first couple years. People just jammed Tarmogoyf in their decks when it just wasn't good. Uh, but it's a sweet creature, 2 mana, 4/5 or 5/6 even. It's a good deal, real sweet. It's fallen off the map a little bit. Um, Probably not a card that's going to get a lot better in the future, just because, um, well, I mean, it doesn't do anything. Like you'd have to have like some sort of really good graveyard synergy stuff, but not be like some sort of broken deck or whatever. Uh, so yeah, again, it's good block stuff, um, but it's a little boring. It was in a lot of places, but it's lost a lot of its luster over the years. But I mean, whatever. Let's take a drink. Let's take a drink for Tarmogoyf. My baby boy, look at him. That's okay. it's okay. This card's sweet. It's got great art. I like the weird frame on the feature site stuff. But yeah, this card is great, but not as great as it used to be. And not much else to say about Tarmogoyf that hasn't already been said, so just leave it there. But he's certainly easily good enough to make the top of this list. I mean, shit, he's a lot better than Hermit Druid. That's for damn sure. Alright, let's go to number 6. Okay, we got Stoneforge Mystic. I like this card a lot better than, say, something like Tarmogoyf, because if only for the fact that, well, other than the fact that it sees a lot of play, I think the card's just better than Goyf. I mean, there at least was a decent reason to ban, Stoneforge in Modern, because it is pretty powerful. Um, and it does, even if it gets removed, you still have the equipment in your hand, although this card obviously really needs like good equipment, so something like Jite or Batterskull or Swords or whatever to be good. But again, typically formats that this is legal in, those cards will be legal in too. I guess with the exception of Jite, which is not legal in Modern. I don't know how oppressive Jite would be. Like, are there really? Would that really even be too good? I mean, I can't imagine it would be. Like, some of these equipment are just kind of bad in a lot of matchups. I mean, oh no, like the creature matchups devolve into Jite v Jite. Like, sweet. People are playing fair magic with like Jites and stuff. Like, I think that would be sweet, but that doesn't seem to be the shape of Modern at the moment. Anyways, Stoneforge is good. I think it's better than Tarmogoyf at the moment. It gives you, well, one card from hand, one into hand, so it's basically +0 card advantage, but it gives you a creature at least, and if it's not answered, it gives you a Batterskull, which is pretty good. Maybe not the best, but at least something like Batterskull, it's like, wow, this card's really good against like some of the really decks like a Burn or whatnot. I mean, obviously if they're not Searing Blazing this or whatever, but very strong. Um, is a great role player and the disruptive white decks, whether it be Death and Taxes and Legacy or even something like Stoneblade. I think Stoneblade's a little better now. Well, maybe not better than Death and Taxes, but the deck archetype itself is better because you have all these different angles of attack. Something like TNN, True Name Nemesis, which is great to carry equipment, or you have Back to Basics and stuff like that, which is great against multicolor decks. And then stuff like now Narset, and you can protect your Narset better too because you have all these just random dorks and shit. So yeah, I think Stoneblade's actually quite a bit better now than it used to be, because including Stoneforge Mystic, you have all these different angles of attack, which certainly makes this kind of mopey sort of deck a lot better if you have like these random nukes you can drop, different bombs or whatever in each particular matchup. So I like it quite a bit too, and I love decks with a lot of basics. You just can't go wrong there. But anyways, Stoneforge, real important, and like Standard, Vintage, and Modern before I guess it was banned or something. But all formats really great. It's really strong. A little weaker, little bit weaker, but it's a good card. It's a good card. Probably not going to get any better though. I mean, unless they print some like absurd like 10 mana 10 mana equipment or whatever. I mean, shit, that would be awesome. Maybe he'll move up then. But yeah, Stoneforge, pretty good, number 6. I think there's other cards that are better than that. Actually, I think there's 5 better than that. 2 drops even. So let's look at those guys. So we go from a card that's really not so good if it gets answered to a card that it doesn't matter if you answer it because then it's too late. So basically, this card is, I mean, this is kind of a cheat, like the Walking Ballista, because Goblin Recruiter doesn't really matter if you kill it, because it's already done its damage once it's come into play. I mean, it's barely a creature, especially since you have Aether Vial, Cavern of Souls, and Goblin Lackey to put this guy into play for free. Pretty silly. So yeah, this is, I mean, probably one of the dumbest cards ever, in a lot of different ways. I mean, only reason it's not like one of the best cards of all time is because you just limited strictly to goblins. So yeah, stacking your deck is pretty strong. You can do a lot with that. Again, the old Food Chain Goblins from PT New Orleans extended, pretty powerful. This was a pretty good deck back in Vintage as well because it had an excellent workshop matchup and wasn't even that bad against like the Tog decks. Yeah, this guy does a lot of good stuff. Um, so yeah, it barely counts as a creature half the time. Um, I mean, not a lot of things. I mean, you guys you could stifle the ability, but this is already a deck with uh, approximately 1 million different stifle targets. So even then, it's like that's helpful, but that's certainly not the end of the story. Um, yeah, this thing is probably okay for Legacy, I think, just because, well, obviously, it only goes in one deck, so you know like exactly what it'll be doing, because you need like a bunch of goblins to really make this card worth it. But it is really powerful. But I think that'd be okay. And then again, I think pretty much any of the like you're going to be stalling or whatever is just kind of like a stupid retort. Like I don't think that's very like that's not really it. I mean, yeah, there are people that would do that, but again, that would be pretty much anyone with any deck. Like no one uses that when like someone's casting like 5 minute brainstorms or 10 minute ponders or whatever. I mean, I'm being facetious, but like people, I mean, there's a lot of decks with a lot of different choices, and typically, once you cast a recruiter for like, say, 20 something goblins, like the game's going to be over next turn. So it's not like it makes the games drag on. Sometimes you just have a longer turn. But yeah, this guy's pretty nuts. One of the only 3 creatures banned in Legacy at the moment. This guy, Druid, Hermit Druid, of course, which we already talked about, and of course Deathrite Shaman. Um, this guy's probably just the most powerful of any of the cards on the list because he doesn't really even have summoning sickness. You just have him resolve, and that's good. So, but again, yeah, he's only playable in a couple decks, um, and he's not even legal. So yeah, but I mean, trying to think of what I can even say about this card. I mean, it's kind of silly. It's like talking about like contract from below or something. Uh, there are times when it's like, oh, sometimes hyperbole is appropriate. Yeah, this is probably one of the dumbest creatures they've ever printed. Like just like text line and just all of it. It's just dumb. This was fine back in the day before they printed like this was even before stuff like Goblin Lackey. So yeah. Yeah, this card would be sweet. I'd love to play with it again. If I could play Food Chain Goblins, I actually have a Food Chain Goblin deck, um, all sleeved up or whatever, Legacy legal, on, if they ever unban Recruiter. I think that'd be super sweet. But really powerful, but you can't really play him very many places, and a lot of his power is predicated on having all these other ridiculous goblins like Lackey, Pile Driver, Gempalm, War Chief, all those guys all together. Um, yeah, this card is sweet though. Oh boy. But let's go on to cards that are really strong, but also really ubiquitous too. Okay, so this guy is pretty good. This is one of the preview cards I was really the most excited to see. I was like, oh my god, you flashback brainstorms, flashback swords, and all sorts of stuff like that. Um, this card's sweet. This card advantage. Sometimes it's just an ambush viper, just coming to block stuff. It can attack planeswalkers down. It can attack your opponent. Um, I mean, this guy's kind of like one of those cards is kind of an auto include in a lot of mid-rangey or slower or controlling blue decks. Um, just giving you your extra spells, your best spells that you played this game. I mean, this card is sweet. really, really sweet. And there's not a lot to say about this guy. Sometimes you'll play anywhere from 1 to 4. Uh, I guess 1 is not very common, and same thing with 4, but 2 to 3 is usually pretty common. And this card is amazing. Getting extra brainstorms, that's pretty good. Getting extra body to block or jump or attack planeswalkers, again, very, very good. Yeah, it's Tiago Chan, and it looks like Tiago Chan. And he's got a Ghostbuster thingy. I don't really know what that is, but yeah, this card's really powerful. Um, yeah, what more can you say about Snapcaster Mage? This card is sweet. It's got a lot of different modes, does everything. I mean, that's basically it, right? But again, I still think there were more powerful and more ubiquitous cards, more or less. So what do we got? Yeah, now we're talking. Now this is something I like. I love Thalia. Okay, first off, what a lady. What a pretty lady. Okay, that's awesome. Great art. I love the art so much. This is really good art. I mean, it should be telling that like this card is a legendary, but it's seen play as like a 3 to 4 of in pretty much every deck. So it's great at attacking, got great stats, and of course its ability is very, very good. Uh, this thing is very powerful, really awesome for the disruptive white decks. I mean, Death and Taxes would certainly be a lot worse without this card in Legacy. I like it. I think it's a little bit better. Maybe I'm probably biased, but I like it a little bit better than Snapcaster. Whereas this thing is just pretty much a better role player in all the decks that it sees play in. A little bit stronger, very disruptive. Sees play in a bunch of different formats. Um, I mean, you can't. I think it's maybe not as powerful as Snapcaster, but I think it's more important to the decks that play it. Um, yeah, I think that's about right. And she's a strong, independent woman. You can tell. So yeah, I like Thalia a lot. I still think there's a couple cards that are better, but let's go ahead and look at them. All right. So number 2 is Dark Confidant. I actually like this card a little bit more, where his value seems to, wax and wane over time. Uh, but I think he's just a better card than pretty much the rest of the guys on the list for the most part, at least when it comes to like how strong it can be. Like, snapping like plows and brainstorms and stuff like that, or duress or Thoughtseize or all those kinds of things is really powerful, but Dark Confidant just keeps giving to you that every turn. And it's seen play a lot in combo decks, control decks, aggro decks, mid range, all of this stuff. Really good. And there was oh shoot, was it? It was a like a snow control deck thing from like Time Spiral Ravnica block that played like this guy and Counterbalance and Sensei's Divining Top. That was pretty sweet. Man, that was a sweet deck. But yeah, Bob does another again another invitational card. I think this card's just absurd. Like, oh, it's playing turn 1 off of like a Mox and Vintage. That's pretty nice too. Uh, Easy to cast, good at beating down, good in like the Storm decks because you can um, every time you attack, this is just one less spell you have to play. Good for grinding against control decks. This card's seen play pretty much everywhere in all sorts of different decks, although, again, like it said, his value waxes and wanes. Sometimes he rises, sometimes he falls, but I think overall he's really, really good. If you want to see some decks he's been really good in, of course, the aforementioned Thopter Depths deck I was talking about when mentioning Vampire Hexmage. Um, those decks played Bob too. For example, like answering a first turn Bob is different than the hate they need for the Thopter sword combo. So he's very when he's good, he's just absurd, like insane. Um, and then when he's not good, he's just fine, I guess. So this guy's really really good. I think he's just so strong. but sees play in pretty much every kind of archetype. I mean, he just does it all. But I think there's actually one more card that's actually better than all of them. Yeah, that's right. All of them. Have you figured it out? I don't know, maybe you have. Let's just get to it. Let's just get to it. That's right. That's right. That's right. This guy, freaking Arcbound Ravager. Yeah, this is probably one of the most. This is probably in the running for one of the top 10 most like stupid creatures ever. This thing just broke format after format after format after format and had to get like a million different cards banned. This thing is stupid. I mean, even now, even with all the power creep, this thing is out of control. Like, so 2 mana for 1/1. It's like, oh man, it looks meh. But he has Sacrifice Outlet, which is really good. He has Modular. So even if he dies, he put his counters on stuff. He can avoid exile removal and all sorts of other crap. And he just gets bigger as the game goes on. I mean, this card is just has two layers, two different levels of synergy. So we've got the typical artifact stuff, which is usually what we've seen him in most of the time. Everything from standard affinity to the workshop Ravager decks and vintage that we recently got 3, 4, 5 cards banned. I mean, this guy is a big part of that. I mean, being able to play him early off of like just our land or and some moxes or just like a wasteland, so you can waste them first turn, then play this guy off 2 random moxes. I mean, that's really strong. And then of course there's the newer sort of stuff with the counters, all the counter shenanigans, and that was a little bit surprising. Like the Hardened Scales decks, real nice. That this thing gets huge. Oh boy, you can just do all sorts of fun stuff. So this guy just keeps getting better and better and better and more synergistic with all these different cards around it, even with all this random crap banned, even with like artifact lands banned, even with Skull Clan banned. It's just amazing. It's gotten probably more cards banned than any other creature, probably not even close, I'd imagine. It just does everything. So not only does this card basically see play in every format, and even sometimes in different decks, like regular affinity, using Experimental Frenzy or something like that in Modern versus Hardened Scales. Totally different formats, lots of different decks. Sometimes, or like Steel Stompy, which is in Legacy, which is more similar to the Workshop decks, which is different than like the regular sort of affinity decks. I mean, he's just in every format, lots of different decks, always very impactful. And obviously the power level is like off the charts, like at least 9001 ish, maybe 9002. Definitely goes to 11. This card's ridiculous. It's silly. It's only going to get better because they like to print artifact sets, and this card's good with artifact cards. It's good with counters. It's good with pretty much everything. Yeah. So this thing is seen play everywhere. Tons of different power. Been really prominent in all these different formats. I mean, it's pretty much the poster child for every single like metric I would have for like what is a best creature. That would be this guy. Be Arcbound Ravager, and fittingly, it's a beast. Yes, right. It's a beast. I always thought that was funny when they gave it a creature type and it's a beast. And I'm like, all right, well, that's appropriate. So that's it, guys. That's my bestest artifact list of awesomeness with Arcbound Ravager and some other guys who aren't as strong or cute as Arcbound Ravager. So that's right. This is Arcbound Ravager's list now. It's not top 10 2-drops. It's just top 10 Arcbound Ravager cards that Arcbound Ravager likes to eat. So yeah, that's it, guys. So thanks for stopping by and have a great day.